Welcome to the Oral Apothecary Podcast, authentic chat about medicines, pharmacy and healthcare in the UK.
Pharmacists Jamie, Gimmo and STC take on topical and controversial stories, but keep it edgy yet light-hearted.
Guests share their career-defining drug, song and book, and also share their joyful patient stories. Welcome to the Oral Apothecary Podcast. My name is Jamie Hayes. For this, the final episode of Series 6, we're joined by Tommy Whitelaw. Tommy is the National Lead Person-Centred Voices at Health and Social Care Alliance Scotland. We will welcome Tommy in a moment as he shares a drug for our formulary, his career anthem, and recommends a book for the Oral Apothecary Library. No micro-discussion today, as it's the end of Series 6. We have that end of exams feeling about us. Let me welcome my two fellow apothecaries. STC is in Bournemouth and Gimmo is in Cardiff. Evening.
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 So I haven't bought my games since it's end of term, but I did bring a gin and tonic, which you persuaded me to have, Jamie. And actually, I was looking today at the list of episodes from this series. I realised our first episode was in January. So I think we recorded just after Christmas, didn't we? So it was after New Year. And it was Rory, Kettle and Jones. So it's a good series. There's some good guests there.
And congratulations to Rory on his OBE.
That's right, I was going to say. And so that's the podcast effect, is awards follow. So no pressure on Tommy when we chat to him later on. Listen, I mentioned a couple of times I've been doing some work on falls. We just found out yesterday that we've been nominated for an NHS award. And in fact, the team I work with, we've been nominated for 2 awards. So the falls work, and we helped to set up, in particular Rachel and our team helped to set up a bereavement cafe, at a loss cafe. And that's a service in Clontarf Maganog for people who are struggling to cope with grief, and supports them in dealing with that. And so 2 awards. So I'm going to get out my best bib and tucker, and hopefully we'll have something to celebrate in September.
Very good. Well, I don't have any games, but I have got a question for you. So this comes from Claire, who's one of our superb prescription clerks that I work with at the practice, who is a listener to the pod. So thanks very much, Claire. I know you do listen. And she just, from left field, because she shares in a big room, and so she will overhear some of the conversations sometimes I have. And so she just left field leaned over to me earlier this week and said, "So, which drug do you wish was never invented?" And I said, "Whew. Now, you know, it's not often I'm stumped, but that's actually a really, really good question. I'm going to ask the oral apothecary that question. So I have suggested to you in the setup to this. So what would your answer be?
You did mention it in the WhatsApp group. So I sort of, what do you think the most dangerous drug was before 2019, responsible for the most deaths? There's a question back at you.
Before 2019?
Yeah. So arguably it's paracetamol.
Yeah.
But after 2019, it's either fentanyl or oxycodone.
Oxycodone.
For the international impact, I don't think the impact in Britain is as large, but the international impact, I'd go oxycodone.
I thought it's a very hard question, because you go back in time and history and you want to pick all the ones that have harmed lots of people. But I've gone with my gut in the end, which was my immediate, first seconds. And I'm going to go tramadol as just an emotional response to tramadol.
It's a dirty drug.
Yeah.
You've both gone in the same field then. You've both gone in analgesics. So like you, I went with my first instinct at the end after giving it a lot of thought. And I got into this whole world of, you know what, even for some of those, even the ones you've just mentioned, so oxycodone, for some people it's been a game changer. And so it's always that weighing it up, isn't it, as to there's been some benefit, but also there's potentially been some harm. So I found it very difficult, but you know what? I'm going to go with Dr. Lucy Pollock, and I'm going to go with amlodipine, because I spend my entire weeks talking to people who've got side effects due to amlodipine, and there are loads of other great drugs for high blood pressure that I can use, so I'm going to go for that.
So when I used to sort of be a leader in the Scouts or whatever, we always used to joke that there's no such thing as bad weather, there's just bad equipment. So maybe there's no such thing as a bad drug, there's just bad prescribing.
Well, that's very true. I think there's a quote in there, definitely.
I think Mark Talbot, has pointed that out on a number of occasions. Yeah.
And the other funny thing that happened this week, talking to a patient about something else, and it was a review, and he said to me, "Oh, and I've stopped that other medication." And I said, "Oh, which one?" He said, "Oh, the bum one. The bum one." I was like, "Oh, it's not on any laxatives." I'm not really sure what he's on about. So, we go on a lot on the Oral Apothecary about pronunciation of names. So he really meant bumetanide, which of course starts with bum.
Very good. Very good. I'm going to remind people that we said at the outset of this podcast, and it might come up later, is that the guests that will add the class and culture to the proceedings as Steve just takes us down an avenue. Look, I've been on the culture trail again. I went to see Bjorn again in Hampton Court, following the success of my Bruce Springsteen concert in Cardiff. But the thing that trumps, certainly Bjorn again, not quite Springsteen, but I went to watch Nye with Michael Sheen in the Millennium Centre about the history of the NHS, and it was sensational. So if you get a chance to see it. And then look, tonight is a Tuesday night pod, folks. Penarth is eerily quiet because everybody is at Taylor Swift in the centre of Cardiff tonight.
It is weird, isn't it? The city is locked down.
It is. It's the superstar is in town. Okay, look, 10 episodes, 2 live shows, including our first public show, £500 or more to Big Moose Charity. That's what we've done this series. And so thanks to everybody who's taken the time to contact us with their ideas, suggestions, and the odd correction here and there. We'll come on to that later as well. Let's move on. It's our great pleasure to welcome Tommy Whitelaw to the podcast. A little bit about Tommy. We'll put his full bio in the show notes. For 5 years, Tommy Whitelaw was a full-time carer for his late mother, Joan, who had vascular dementia. In 2011, Tommy undertook a walk around Scotland's towns and cities to collect hundreds of life stories and letters detailing the experiences of individuals who care for a loved one living with dementia. He's done an absolute stack since, and his work has reached over 280,000 people across 2,000 talks, looking at 30,000 What Matters to You pledges. And then, look, this is where we might get to as well. Like in 2014 and 2019, and again in 2023, Tommy produced Concerts for Caring. Each concert held at Glasgow's Royal Concert Hall saw over 1,800 individuals join together for an evening of music, celebration and respite. He's understandably received many awards. Welcome to the podcast, Tommy.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for the kind invite and introduction.
Well, let's go to the invite first, Tommy. Then, do you remember where the invite happened?
I do. It's at Strathclyde University. Yes, at the conference. Absolutely, I remember it.
Okay, so I was chairing that day and you were on, and then one of our previous guests, Dr. Catherine Labinger, was on. Do you remember what happened after you finished your session? So you just wowed the audience of 350 people. Do you remember what happened after?
Who I met after?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I had been sharing a story as part of my talk. Well, I was speaking about loneliness, actually, and isolation and fear. Lots of things that come along when you're caring for a loved one and trying to make decisions, and lots of things that you don't understand yourself. And I was speaking about the local pharmacist, Lauren, who actually in many ways I could have got my mum's medication delivered, but actually just getting out the house for 10 minutes and speaking to someone else sort of reassured me. But she did say to me one day, now at this point, I don't know, she's in this conference of 350 people, and this was 12 years ago this happened. And she just said to me one day, you have to demand a review of your mum's medication. She's getting prescribed from the hospital, the GP, the community, the CPN, and there's something that's just not right. I want you to go home and I want you to demand a review of your mum's medication. And medication is a thing that we put our trust in others with different knowledge, better knowledge. I was a son, I stumbled into caring for my mum, and it was in amongst me falling apart over a long period of time at that point as well, where physically, mentally, my confidence, everything. I'll be honest, I felt quite hopeless most days in a lot of that. But that gave me the confidence to go and ask strongly for a review. And in that review, I think if my memory serves me correct, between inhalers and different medication, my mum was on about 14, 15 tablets and 3 different inhalers a day for living with dementia, diabetes, and lots of other things. And incredibly, when we got that review, actually, we got my mum into hospital, actually. My demand was that strong. And when my mum came back out of hospital, she was on 5 tablets a day and 1 inhaler. But something incredibly beautiful and magical happened, because for the months before that, my mum didn't remember my name and sometimes quite often didn't remember who I was. And after a little while on that reduced medication, my mum on certain days said my name. And I can't tell you what it feels like when the person who's guided you through life, been there for you in your biggest struggles, who's given you more than they've ever taken for themselves, and you haven't heard their voice, they haven't said your name for such a long time, to remember your name. And it only happened for a little while. It took a while, and then for a couple of months, the odd time, I would go into my mum's room in the morning to help her, and she would say Thomas. My mum always called me Thomas, although this conversation I used Tommy. There's a story behind that. But I can't tell you what that meant to me, to hear my mum's voice. I was desperate to hear my mum's voice when you're struggling beside someone, and I was sharing that story, and incredibly, that young pharmacist was in the audience. I can't believe it.
So absolutely, Tommy. I was in the middle of recruiting you, saying, Tommy, that was brilliant. And then this pharmacist just wandered up to the two of us in the corner of the auditorium, and she stuck her hand out to Tommy, and she said, "Hi, Tommy," and he said, "Hello, hello." And I think I'm sure you normally get lots of people coming up to you after your talks to say that was great, and can we book you and things like that. And she said, "I was the pharmacist."
Yeah.
And Tommy did a double take, and he went, "What do you mean you're and then all of a sudden I saw the pattern recognition take place, Tommy, where you processed and you realised who it was. And if I'd been any decent on social media, I would have captured the whole emotional moment, and it would have gone viral. But I didn't spoil it. It was quite a moment. So Laura McPhee was the pharmacist from Scotland that came up and said, "Tommy, I was the pharmacist that looked after your mum."
Wow.
And the language you used, Tommy, is Laura's language was demand, wasn't it? She mentioned demand. You mentioned it a couple of times there, and then you ask strongly.
Yes. When you feel like your world's collapsing inside and your heart's broken at the same time, and your confidence shrinks, doesn't it? Your ability to ask, and it takes people to give you those strength, to bring that strength back again. It was an absolutely magical moment. I've got a photo of her on my phone, actually. We got a lovely photo together. But I hadn't saw her for 12 years. I mean, it's incredible, so what an incredible moment, and forever in my mind and my heart.
So that's a brilliant story. And there's a few things in there. I was going to come on to this later, but the power of that caring attitude and a small intervention, relatively easy intervention from that pharmacist's point of view, made a massive difference. It doesn't take much, does it, sometimes? There's that. There's my wife's a mental health pharmacist, and she describes that sometimes. The feedback she's had from patients is, "You've given me my mum back," sort of thing, after an intervention, and what she described is exactly what happens to you. Haven't really given them the mum back. It's just that moment that you get a little moment back, which is really important. So I think that's a fantastic story.
It's beautiful and magical, isn't it? And I think it's just sitting underneath that. Going up sometimes to collect my mum's medication might be the only conversation I had that week. So it's sitting underneath that, there was that just need to feel reassured and just to speak to someone else, So there's so many benefits from it. And actually, it shows the beauty of community and keeping people at the heart of the community, and the part that pharmacy plays in the heart of people's communities.
I don't know if the NHS constitution is a thing in NHS Scotland, but certainly in England, I posted something this week on Twitter X, and it is a watershed, this, because the European Society of Cardiology, the one-time single organologists that I often give a bit of a beating, have actually come up with some guidance, some really good guidance about when to think about stopping medicines and including patients' values and preferences. So it's a massive, massive move forward. But somebody who I know is a listener to the podcast, Liz Butterfield, posted that she had actually put forward to the NHS Constitution is currently open for public consultation. And she said that she'd put a request in there she said, "I'd love to see access to structured medication reviews in the NHS Constitution." So I don't know whether you'd agree with that or not.
Well, absolutely, because I think the thing that was noticed by Laura that day was that medication had been prescribed and just never stopped. Where does that conversation of this repeat prescription, and then somebody adds something else. There's a young at my talks, I try and speak to young students about the importance of finding out what and who really matters to people. And for one of the students' projects in her placement in a care home, she checked the medication, how long people had been on it for. And there was a gentleman who was quite distressed. And actually, the reason he'd distressed because he'd been constipated and put on, and you know better than me which medication, a series of, but had it been stopped, and as soon as he readjusted it, his distress levels changed.
Yeah.
Everything, the smile came back again. That was a young student in second year nursing that just noticed that and asked a question. Just asked a question.
Yeah. And you will know, I'm sure, perhaps with your mum, but people with dementia, their bowel habit makes a massive difference to how they are on a day-by-day basis. And so, Tommy, you won't know. So I still work as a clinician, as a clinical pharmacist, and I probably stop more medicines than I start. But I get really irate about the very common things like that, where it's pretty obvious that you've just filled them full of stuff that we know the first list of the side effect for that drug is constipation, and we haven't given them any laxatives. And then we think, oh, we've now created this problem. It was often quite preventable.
I think at that point in the review, I think that's actually one of the things that came up from Laura was my mum was on medication to help her bowels and one for constipation and one to stop. There was two completely fighting against each other.
Antagonising, yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy, listen to your mum's story has reminded me of one of my favourite case studies, and I've probably read it out in series 1, but we're series 6, and so I'm allowed to read it out again because it's so important for your mum's story as well. And it's from Steve's journal, look, the European Journal of Hospital Pharmacy that Steve's involved with, and it's a report. It's a case study, an 87-year-old woman with vascular dementia, admitted to a care home. Psychotropic medicines being prescribed over a 3-month period before admission: promethazine, nitrazepam, trazodone, amisulpride, lorazepam. They were informed by her family that she'd been a very active person. She enjoyed painting and music and had been a talented piano player. And the story goes that they slowly started to de-prescribe the medicines and things started to improve, and the consultant started to take her over to the piano. And slowly, week by week, she started to play the piano with one hand to begin with, and then they de-prescribed most of the medicines. I think she was left on one. But then she started playing music from memory, and then the impact on her and her family. So it's one of my favourite de-prescribing stories. The individuals look, Shaheen Shora and Danielle Adams from the Department of Older Adult Psychiatry, Hertfordshire NHS Foundation Trust.
And it's interesting, I know we might chat about some other things in music, which was a big part of my life as well, but great organisations, charities like Playlists for Life, who work with people living with dementia and families to build a playlist. And actually they feel it reduces medication distress. It has an incredible part to play. And that's just finding the music that was part of people's stories. And I'd encourage you to go and watch it. I think it's Barbara's story, and it was, both a second marriage for both of them. But their song was 3 times a lady when they get married. But her husband now was in a care home and hadn't communicated verbally for a long time. And she would go in tears to the care home to visit him and leave the care home in tears. And Playlist for Life worked with them to find music. And if you watch the little video, it's quite incredible. As they listen to it, he's got one of the headphones in and so is she. He starts to sing it and he puts his hand over and says, "I love you." And whereas before she was leaving in tears because it felt so distant at the time. Prescribe some music. Prescribe some music. But have a wee look at Playlists for Life. It's Sally Magnuson, whose father was obviously Mastermind.
Right, okay, yeah.
And Sally's our national newsreader here in Scotland, and has written a great book called Where Memories Go about her mum living with dementia. But incredible charity, and that's prescribing music, but finding not just any music, trial and finding out and getting the history and trying things out that work and don't. And we know it reduces stress and distress, it helps with stress and distress in hospitals, care homes, and in people's homes.
Yeah, I was going to say, reduces your stress as well, doesn't it, as a carer? I remember, I think I probably mentioned it when you said this story originally, Jamie. It happened with my nan when she had dementia, and she was quite an accomplished pianist, and it was the last thing to go. You know, she couldn't recognise anyone or anything, but she'd just sit down and play these quite complicated pieces of music, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it's a reminder to all of us that are prescribers that, you know, we need to put time and effort into prescribing, and we shouldn't just rush into prescribing something when there may be other things, particularly for dementia patients, around the environment that they're currently in, or they've got a concurrent infection, before essentially prescribing something which unfortunately in too many people then doesn't get reviewed quickly enough, and then lands in what we're all describing here, and we've all witnessed, is people who end up on things for lots and lots and lots of years. So that kind of runs a theme through this podcast always, Tommy.
Yeah, I think, and that's crucial, I think. And that starts off with, I think, the most important questions of all is finding out what and who matters to any individual. I think for any of, you know, the four of us on this call today, I think we deserve, I think it's crucial that if we're getting any advice, support or care delivered, that the person or persons delivering it know who we are, and the persons or people we love most in this world. Because I think that leads to all of these things, whether it be music, how I like to dress, you know, how I like to sit. So if we flip it back, this conversation away from what's the matter with people to what and who matters to them, is the starting point for me for the beautiful stuff.
So, Tommy, we've certainly mentioned the what matters conversation, you know, throughout the series of this podcast, which is great. The other two that you mention that you're spending time with students and audiences is intelligent kindness,
yes,
and civility saves lives. Do you want to just expand on those two for us?
Yeah, so I think, and I'll quote the brilliant Bob Clabber, that is, you know, that too often we think that kindness is a soft and frivolous thing, but actually it's crucial and critical to everything that we do. So intelligent kindness comes from Ballot and Campling. So you will have read the mid-staffs report, which was, you know, a really important report. But also it was very lawyer speak. If you break it down, it was very lawyer speak. You know, and it was, and that's not to take away from the importance. But Ballot and Campling looked at it again, and they've created this circle of intelligent kindness. So what it tells us is that when we're attentive, when we create the time and the space to listen, we create attunement. So I'm listening to understand, and I'm listening so that you feel heard. And it does something absolutely beautiful. It builds trust, creates a therapeutic alliance between two people or people, and produces better outcomes, which promotes more of the same. So have a little look at that circle of intelligent kindness. So for me, kindness is absolutely crucial and critical, because the opposite of that is incivility, when we give rudeness and incivility a space where it goes unchallenged. So we have to challenge rudeness with kindness. So I'll give you some of the top line figures. So what happens when someone is rude? Well, 80% of us spend time worrying about it, recipients. So if I'm spending all day worrying about how someone's going to treat or speak me, if I'm taking a deep breath before I walk into my workplace, I'm not thinking clearly, and it makes mistakes. So you also don't have to be the recipient of rudeness. So to work in a space, be in a space on a daily basis where a colleague or colleagues are not necessarily being rude or treating you with incivility, but you witness it every day. You witness their behaviour towards others. Well, we lose about 30% of our ability to do our job, and we lose about half our willingness to help others. For people receiving services, it's 75% less enthusiasm, but it's deeper than that. 48% of us will reduce our time at work. I'm going to say it twice, actually. This 48% of people reduce their time at work, will avoid a shift or on a rota to avoid being in the same space. But the one thing I would like you to was all to take away from today on incivility is 1 in 4 of us who are treated with incivility tomorrow and the next day will walk out the room it happened in and use similar behaviours on the very next person we meet. And in frontline care, that's usually a patient, a family member, or a carer that we meet first, or a colleague. But if you look at it, that's usually so. 1 in 4 of us treated with rudeness and incivility take it out on the next person we meet. So that's why I think kindness really matters. For me, the kindness was Laura, that incredible pharmacist. It was the district nurse that put her hand round my shoulder when my world was falling apart and told me I was going to be okay. You know, these moments are crucial and critical. They're beautiful, they're remarkable, they're nourishing, they're confidence building. You know, we often, listening comes in different ways in forums, and kindness is a beautiful way to listen, sharing some kindness.
So, Tommy, you might be interested to know that on the very first episode of the Oral Apothecary, we talked about whether there was a compassion crisis in healthcare, and there was a book called Compassionomics.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've read it. So, and in fact, we also, well, I say we, Paul, for the listener, it's Paul that picks the final ingredient every episode, and he does a great job. But we have actually, Paul has used Civility Saves Lives previously, Paul, haven't you, as a final ingredient. It was suggested to us by another listener called Alex Farmer, who I think is a pharmacist who works in emergency department.
Yep, good research it was. What I was going to mention was I was reflecting back on that conversation on compassionate healthcare when I read this report, because I got
Me too.
a little bit of stick. I'm not because I don't really like compassionate healthcare, but it's not that I don't like the idea of compassionate healthcare. I don't like the way it's been applied as a management tool, and I really like this definition. So I'm going to read it out if that's okay, because I think it's really important. It says, kindness then is not a soft sentimental feeling or action. That is beside the point. It's a binding, creative and problem-solving force that inspires and focuses the imagination and goodwill. It inspires and directs the attention towards building relationships with patients, recognizing their needs and treating them well. Kindness is not a nice side issue. It is the glue of cooperation required for progress to be of most benefit to most people. And that along with the circle you described says what I was trying to say in that first episode, that compassion and kindness, obviously there's an individual quality to it, but there's a systems quality to it as well. The system has to enable things like compassionate healthcare and kindness to happen. We can all be kind, but on its own, that's what this thing describes. It's sentimental. For it to be purposeful, the system needs to enable it.
Yeah. And that helps us to create that meaning and purpose as well. It's part of the foundations of meaning and purpose. And actually, that's how I think we build any great place to work. And how you build any great place to work is recognising each other's human needs.
Yes, that's it.
And that gives you that connection. So trust, openness, shared accountability. So that's the great stuff, isn't it? I'll join that team tomorrow. Trust, openness, shared accountability. But the flip side of that is the incivility, giving people connection to meaning and purpose, autonomy and control. And what they do is if we're doing that together as a team, we're recognising each other's human needs. And the big outcome from that is the 4 of us go home feeling like it's a great place to work. We feel like it's a great place to work.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying as well, Tommy, isn't it, is that if you yourself are uncivil, it may not necessarily be your fault. I mean, obviously we can all exercise a level of control.
Yeah.
But if you're in a system that's created that atmosphere, then it's inevitable that you yourself will do it, is what it also says, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we do, we have moments as well, all of us, we're not immune to these, but I think it's how we have to build that, to take some of that away, to support us, to have the ability to take it out the equation. But yeah, I think it's for all of us to play our part. It's a team sport. It's a team sport. It takes us all to play our part.
We've just had our 1,000th person, GP or clinical pharmacist, through the action learning sets to do with polypharmacy and deprescribing in Wessex this last month, in fact. And it comes up time and time again, Tommy, about if you need to have a difficult conversation with a patient, thinking about maybe there are medicines that you're worried that they're at harm because of, if you have got a relationship with that person as a clinician, it's much easier to tackle the difficult stuff. Whereas if you try to take it on like a transactional thing, oh, by the way, I noticed you've ordered too many of these painkillers, therefore I've cut them, and therefore next month you're immediately going to be on the back foot. So it all plays into what I've learned in the 8 years I've been working in general practice, is that if you build that relationship, you could do the easy stuff for transactional stuff, but if you want to do the difficult stuff, you've got to have a relationship. And these patients, they're your patients. They come back to you time and time again. So you have to be honest with them and you have to be civil with them. So this chimes perfectly, if you like. But I think that's just where sometimes for long-term conditions reviews, we need to remember it because it's incredibly important.
So I agree with everything you said there. I think often if we go one direction, it leads to conflict. It becomes a conflict, doesn't it? And they're quite hard to get out of conflicts. So we're trying to flip that to gentle honesty in conversations and discussions. Give me gentle honesty. I can take it, wrap me up in gentle honesty. I'll understand better. But too often, so what part can we play to kind of take away from that conflict that often happens? And then that becomes the pathway we go down for a long time. And it's not a problem solver, it's a problem creator.
I love that gentle honesty. That's the exact opposite of what Jonathan Underhill says to me sometimes. If he says, oh, you've used radical candor there, which is not good with patients. He's not suggesting I'm doing it with patients, but
I've just written it down, Steve. That's a great phrase, isn't it? I like that.
yeah, gentle honesty.
Gentle honesty in conversations and discussion. And I think we all move forward better together because we know what conflict brings, doesn't it? It brings a never-ending spiral and it takes us down this never-ending journey that affects us all. It affects us all. So let's bring in some gentle honesty in conversations and discussions.
Jonathan would come back with ruinous empathy as the other axis on radical candor, just for the record.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I thought gentle honesty was a nice point to take us on to the next part of the podcast.
Can I just say I'm wearing my gin and tonic now, by the way.
I just seen you spilt it all over you, Jamie. What's going on? How many have you had?
Well, it's end of season.
The Oral Apothecary is sponsored by Jamie Hayes Executive Coaching and OneLessPill.com.
Okay, Tommy, so I don't know if you've managed to listen to any of the podcasts, but when you're a guest on the Oral Apothecary, you get to give us 3 things. We always go in the same order. So the first thing we'd like you to give us is a desert island drug. As you know, this is not to save you on a desert island, but this is something that would evoke a powerful memory for you. So what would you like to offer us as your desert island drug?
People and relationships to me is the greatest drug. People, the gift of listening in those moments. I think it's over and above policies and strategies. It's always people that change lives. It's people that make a difference. So, meeting Jamie and one day and feeling his passion and desire, and now meeting you as well. That's a great drug, isn't it? That lifts us up, it encourages us, it enthuses us. And in every occasion, it's been people to me. It's been the pharmacist, Laura. It's been the district nurse. It's been the AHP. So listening is the best drug. Feeling listened to and taking time to listen.
Well, can't argue with that. I was just looking up the other examples that we'd had slightly left field on desert island drugs. And we had somebody had Paul Woodgate picked.
Didn't he have a whiskey?
A particular type of whiskey, yeah.
I should have said Iron Brew, really, shouldn't I?
And Kamal George picked oxygen. And certainly when we've done something similar to this again on the action learning sets, I've had physios pick exercise as their desert island drug. So, given your passion for civility and gentle honesty and helping people with caring and things, I fully accept that in relation to so people.
But it goes back to what we were just talking, wasn't it? It was even us when we're talking about desert island drug, our first thing is to prescribe something, where you're saying prescribe people, prescribe relationships, prescribe that kindness.
You don't know, you'll have more contact in this. The painful loneliness that so many people feel just now. People are painfully lonely. Of all the things, and dementia had a massive impact in my mum's life and me as a son to witness. But just sitting beside that was the painful loneliness, feeling invisible. Oh my goodness, loneliness just knocked the stuffing out of me, sitting underneath my heart broken, with what was happening to my mum. And on every occasion when I thought, I can't do this anymore, it was a person. It was a person reminded me that I could. So it's always people to me.
Tommy, when I do my coaching, I often say that when people come to me, they realise they're in a safe, confidential space, that they emotionally vomit all over me. And then there's another flippant comment, really, that I say, well, and I can say it short, that to listen to somebody for an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half, is better than most of the medicines we dish out. And so then I obviously point out that comes with lots of caveats. But actually, in this day and age where, the chaos of life and the complexity of life, and that's the power of a coaching intervention, to actually listen to somebody, don't interrupt, don't offer them advice, don't offer them solutions. And that's what the coaching is about. So people and listening, they'd be blockbusters if they were medicines.
And we had, as a final ingredient last week, there were some eminent psychiatrists who asked what was their first choice drug for depression. And they said, tackle loneliness and isolation. Yeah. That was an eminent psychiatrist saying exactly what you've just said, Tommy.
Yeah, I think you've said a couple of things there, Jamie, as well, and both of you is about listening. Silence is listening. It's really interesting, isn't it? We get so caught up in busyness. So, I'm getting to know the three of you. I know you a little bit better, Jamie. But if I was to sit and have a conversation out with this for the three of you and say, please tell me why you get up and do what you do every day. Yeah. Well, my heart would be bursting. It would be bursting. I'd be amazed. I'd be joyful. You'd tell me a wondrous, beautiful story. The problem with busyness is always the beautiful stuff we do less of first. So I've always thought busyness is the enemy of beauty. And what else that does is it shortens the time we give to listen. And a couple of reasons I think sometimes people don't do it is they assume everybody wants us to fix something, and it's absolutely not true. People just want to be listened to. So some numbers on that very quickly. When we're really busy and start listening with a first intention to reply as opposed to an intent to listen, we often interrupt between 12 and 18 seconds. When we're really busy, we do about 80% of the speaking. If we say to someone, how can I help you today? What's troubling you? Or, that people only speak in short bursts on average of 30 to 90 seconds. And here's a wee thing I'd say to the three of you and to anybody listening to this. Let's none of us ever be so busy in our life we can't give somebody 30 to 90 seconds of our time of a kind, human, understanding ear. It might change their day, might even change their life. So
very good. So, Tommy, I hope you'll allow me we like to categorize things, particularly pharmacists. So I'm going to put people in as an antidote. So we've had a couple of antidote medicines. And so I'm going to put people in as an antidote to loneliness and illness. How's that? Will that settle for you?
Yes.
Okay, love that answer. So the second thing up, I believe you're got a bit of a musical background. Yes. So we'll maybe let you explain in a minute, but what would you like to offer us then for the Oral Apothecary Spotify playlist as something that you would like to maybe define as a life anthem, maybe?
Oh, so I suppose this is a difficult one for lots of people. I spent 25 to 28 years working with lots of different bands and traveling around the world. And if I didn't like them on the first night, after 3 months, I got to like them. Maybe if I didn't think it was my type of music. So you often put it to the side. So there's so many songs. But I think music it's a great question, because music, a song will come on and it'll remind us of the day we fell in love, fell out of love. It brought us a smile of holidays, of births, of so many things. So I'm going to try and answer it the best I can. I finish, as Jamie sung along with me, every one of my talks with Katy Perry's Roar. And it's because there's a beautiful film that goes with it. I feel it takes a village, and you meet the pharmacists in this film, the scientists, the catering team, the clinicians, the nurses, the HPs. And as the film goes on, more and more people join in. So I've delivered 2,340 talks in this tour. So I've sung it 2,000. Nick Cave, Into Your Arms. Absolutely. My goodness, what a song. What an incredible, incredible song. So because I do roar all the time. And finally, and we might come on to this, one of the effects of my mum's dementia was she was quite fearful of people. It was one of the reasons I supported my mum's personal. I couldn't watch my mum feeling scared of somebody undressing her 3 times a day. I don't know what that would feel like. So, but my mum wasn't fearful of me. But in the mornings when I'd go in to check in, my mum, even with me, she would feel sight fearful. And just one day it came into my memory, and I sang a Perry Como song, For the Good Times, and my mum's eyes lit up. My mum's eyes lit up. And I came to terms with the fact my mum had forgotten my name and maybe didn't understand who I was, but she met my dad and fell in love one day. They made a decision to fall in love, didn't they? I'm a byproduct of that. But I remember growing up at parties, that came into my mind that in Glasgow, every party finished, you had to go in the middle of the floor and sing a song. And my dad was a great singer, and he would sing these incredible, whether it be Jim Reeves, Perry Como, Roberta Flack songs. And there could be 50 people in that room, and he would only be looking at my mum. And for all the things I've witnessed in my life, and I've not been so good at myself, watching a love story of two people who gave everything and took so little. So a bit of Perry Como there, a bit of Roar. But I'll go for Nick Cave, Into Your Arms. I think it's a song that we should all listen to.
I love that song. I absolutely love it. That makes me cry. I think Nick Cave as well, he lost, I think he's lost 2 of his sons, hasn't he? And he wrote an album, I think, after the death of his first son. And it's hard to listen to, but it shows you what an art form music is, really.
It matters. It's words and music that matter.
Yeah.
Steve, who was on the live show,
Jatinder
had a brilliant Nick Cave story, didn't he?
Yeah. Can you remember it?
I can.
Go on then.
Well, he used to go. He started to meet him in a cafe, didn't he? In Brighton, I think. He walked in, he thought that's Nick Cave over there, and then he started chatting to him, didn't he? I think over the weeks was my memory of it.
Well, it was more than that. So he was the chief pharmacist, and they were opening a new centre. I think it was either a cancer centre or a pain centre, and they wanted a name. And somehow it came up, and he said, "Can we call it the Nick Cave?" I think it must have been a treatment centre for drug addiction, because it's like, well, actually, wait a minute. I think Nick Cave's had his issues, which is fine, but he couldn't get the trust to agree to calling it the Nick Cave Addiction Centre. But anyway, it is a great song, and it does sound great. So thank you for that.
Sorry, quickly, Tommy. The bands that you travel the world with, what type of bands are they? Are there anything that these two will have heard of?
Well, it started off with the Scottish band Texas.
Oh,
So, Hip Sweet. Well, previously it was Altered Images.
Okay, so Claire Grogan was in the Times this week, actually, on one of the features, because she's back on tour now, isn't she? Saying that she made no money because of unscrupulous management back in the day. That she didn't see a penny for Altered Images.
Well, she did my last concert for Caring along with Callum Beattie, an up and coming Scottish singer. So started off with Texas. We were all young kids, and all of a sudden, I Don't Want a Lover became a hit. And the next minute, we were travelling to America and Japan and around the world. And then after they went off to record another album, I went down to help with the Monsters of Rock at the time at Donington Park. And over the years, so there's quite a list, to be honest. I did the Spice Girls World Tour. I did 2 world tours with U2. Depeche Mode. I did a couple.
They're my favourite.
I've got my plaque up behind me here that says Thomas Whitelaw survived the Depeche Mode World Tour.
Which one?
Survived the Devotional Tour. Devotional Tour, yeah. So that took us around the world. So I've worked with Iron Maiden, Elton John, Primal Scream. I did 3 or 4 tours with Kylie. I went over actually. Lots of bands. There's just quite a few. I actually did I did the concert for New York City after 9/11 with Paul McCartney, The Who, and I went at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
So lots of different bands over the years. So that was my job for nearly 25 years. And in amongst that, it was fast paced. I'd get carried away, and I'd always come back home to Glasgow, and my mum or dad would see I'm getting back to people again. I'd come back to people, and they'd help me figure out where I was going wrong. And it was the last time I came back where everything had changed. I'd just finished. I did 18 months with U2, then straight on to George Michael, where he opened up the new Wembley Stadium, then Barbra Streisand, and was burnt out and came back for my mum to do what she'd done so many times in life. She'd look after me, and everything had changed. So, yeah, that's so I do a little concert every couple of years, and I hope you'll come to the next one. We invite 1,800 people along for free. We give food and drinks out. We get some sponsorship, pay for carers' transport. So anybody who works in health and care or is an unpaid family carer, and we try and give them a wee night to remember every couple
There
of
you
years.
go. There's the next Oral Apothecary Live right there.
We've got a live show for you there.
Sounds
Tommy.
like a great. We can be the warm up.
There you go. You can come and do a podcast at it, and yeah. And on the wee link tree, you'll see I've just launched a wee film the other day of stories of the people who came along.
Our people will talk to your people, Tommy, and we'll
Yeah,
see what we can see what we can get
You're more
going.
than welcome. Come and do a live podcast at the next concert.
Thank you. And the third thing, Tommy, is a book recommendation for the Oral Apothecary Library. So what would you like to give us?
I'm going to speak about Atul Gawande, who I'm sure you'll have read. He's an American physician, being mortal for a very specific reason. My blogs and my talks were about telling my mum's life story from a little girl to making her own wedding dress, and how my dad was her only boyfriend, and my mum was my dad's only girlfriend. All these incredible things about my mum's life. And I would finish that bit by saying, but you now know more about my mum than most of the people involved in her care, because no one ever asked. And I didn't know what the answer to that question was until I met a couple of incredible people, Sean Mayer from here in Scotland, who put his arm around me and helped me find the answer. But being mortal almost answered that. And I just want to quote Atul just now. He said, the key thing I learned in doing my interviews for Being Mortal is that people have goals and priorities for their care besides just living longer. So I'm not in hospital just to live longer in a care home or in my own home. I, as a human, have goals and priorities. When we don't align our care with people's goals and priorities, the result is profound suffering. And it's one of the most important sentences I've ever heard, because it was a story I didn't know how to tell in many ways, or thought I was telling about no one ever asked. When I read that, when he said that, I thought, that's what I've been searching for. So that book, I think it's 10 or 12 years old now. I think it's only £4 in Amazon at the moment. I get no commission. I think it was a game changer to me. Not that conversation of aligning people's goals and priorities. We must align. And that goes back to the earlier conversation of what matters to you and who matters to you. And it leads to my next favourite question, if I can leave you with that, if we're ever going to speak about prescribing. I think the most important question we can ever ask the people we work beside or people we are supporting or advising is, when you have a good day, what makes it a good day? When you have a good day, what makes it a good day? I think it's a beautiful and important question that we should ask our team. So at your next team meeting, could I encourage you to ask that? Find out what makes it a good day for the people we work, live and care beside. I think it gives us a direction and a path to follow.
Very powerful stuff, Tommy. And you have now elevated Atul Gawande, along with myself and Esther Clift, as now the most chosen book in the Oral Apothecary Library. So for that, I am eternally grateful, and I can't say any more good things about the book. If you are listening to this podcast and you have not read Atul Gawande's Being Mortal, then you really, really must.
A big thank you to Tommy for joining us on the Oral Apothecary and for sharing his stories, his Desert Island Drug, and his book for the Oral Apothecary Library. Well, that's it for our 6th series. Thanks to all of you for downloading, listening and recommending the Oral Apothecary. For all of your 5-star reviews, please keep them coming. Wherever you are in the world, your support is really appreciated. Once again, we know that it's our guests, their stories and their experiences that you love listening to. And obviously the episode that we've just heard is an absolute belter. So a huge thank you to all of our guests for recording with us and for sharing their stories, for taking time out of busy and hectic schedules to spend time with us and you, the listener. We will be back refreshed and ready to go in the autumn. Yeah.
Or this could be the last episode ever.
Yes. You're easily replaceable. Remember, great stories happen to people that tell them. Until then, we hope you have a great summer. You can contact us via Twitter at Oral Apothecary. We're on LinkedIn. You can email us at oralapothecarypod@gmail.com. Not forgetting the website, theoralapothecary.com. Over to Anne-Marie now for the final ingredient.
They are the Apothecaries 3, Jamie, Gimmo and STC, to delight us all with their take on health, stories and anecdotes and fun facts as well. They keep it light-hearted and the time it flies past as the guests tell their own tales and of course bring the class. When the guests are relaxed, it doesn't take long. They submit to the library a desert island drug, book and song. Will Jamie's Julian Tudor heart tale still go unannounced? Will Steve tell them off when a drug is mispronounced? Does poor Gimmo's dog still have all its legs as the cost of the vet bills amount to a Fabergé egg? So if you want a fun but informative listen, the Oral Apothecary, this is their mission.
You have been listening to a 3 Apothecaries production. Sound engineer Jimbo Slough, original music Jamie Brewster, artwork by David Baker and Jacob Howard.
Thanks for listening to the Oral Apothecary. As ever, we dispensed with accuracy.
This episode of the Oral Apothecary is sponsored by onelesspill.com and Jamie Hayes Executive Coaching.